Have you ever noticed that the men who demand respect the loudest are usually the ones who receive it the least? This is the paradox of self-worth. You are watching this right now because you feel a disconnect. You know you are capable of immense power, yet you still catch yourself seeking validation from people you do not even respect. You are making a massive mistake, and it is draining your masculine energy. Today, we are tearing down that illusion completely. Self-worth is not a prize you win at the end of a long struggle. It is a decision you make right now. I am going to give you 7 specific sentences. 7 daily anchors. These are not empty, feel-good affirmations. They are psychological weapons designed for the modern world. Most men will click away from this video within the first few minutes, preferring the familiar comfort of their own weakness. But if you are among the rare 1% who are truly ready to take absolute control of your mind, you will stay. Tell me in the comments right now, what is the one single thing that triggers your self-doubt the most? Write it down. Acknowledge it. Then, prepare to let it go forever. Look at the modern world around you. It is entirely designed to make you feel inadequate. The algorithms, the constant social comparison, the endless chase for superficial status. Society wants you to remain utterly dependent on external applause. When your internal value is tied to your income, your relationship status, or the fleeting opinions of absolute strangers, you are nothing but a slave. You willingly hand over the remote control of your emotions to people who do not care about you. This is the exact trap 99% of men fall into every single day. They hustle aggressively for validation. They twist and mold their own personalities just to fit into rooms where they do not even belong. But the elite man, the man who is deeply grounded in true psychological resilience, operates on an entirely different frequency. He understands that modern Stoicism is not about blindly suppressing your emotions like a robot. It is about supreme emotional control. It is about forging a mental fortress that no external force can penetrate. True self-discipline begins the moment you stop asking the world to validate your existence and start commanding your own reality. The first sentence. My value is not up for debate. Let that sink into your mind for a moment. Most men wake up every single day and immediately step into an invisible courtroom. They put themselves on the witness stand, desperately begging the jury, their boss, their partner, their peers, and even strangers on the internet, to declare them worthy. This is a pathetic and deeply exhausting way to live. When you allow your worth to be debated, you have already lost the argument entirely. You are signaling to the world that your value is a fluctuating currency, completely dependent on the unpredictable mood of the social market. Elite men do not negotiate their baseline value. They understand that their core existence, their fundamental character, is an absolute metric. You must deeply internalize this principle if you want to break free from the chains of validation. When someone disrespects you or overlooks your intense effort, they are not lowering your intrinsic value. They are simply revealing their own character flaws and lack of deep perception. Your value remains completely untouched. It is permanent. It is not up for debate. Stop acting like a desperate merchant haggling over the price of your soul in a cheap, crowded market. Why do we negotiate our value in the first place? Because society trains us from birth to constantly seek permission. From the moment you are young, you are graded, evaluated, and ranked against others. You are deeply conditioned to believe that external rewards mean you are good, and external criticism means you are flawed. You carry this dangerous childhood conditioning straight into your adult life. You look at your bank account, your car, or the people surrounding you, and you silently ask them to validate your existence. This is the ultimate trap of the 99%. If you want to elevate yourself into the fraction of men who possess true mental toughness, you must violently sever this psychological cord. You must realize that seeking external validation is a bottomless pit. It will never be enough. There will always be someone richer, louder, or seemingly more successful. If your self-worth is entirely tied to the external world, you will always remain a helpless victim of circumstance. True Stoicism today means taking your power back instantly. It means recognizing that the entire grading system is an illusion. You are the only teacher, and you are the only one who holds the pen to write the final score. How do you actually apply this first sentence? It begins in the utter silence of your morning. Before you check your phone, before you let the chaotic world dump its heavy demands on your shoulders, you face yourself. You do not need to shout. You do not need to aggressively pump your chest like an amateur. You just need a quiet, cold, and calculated realization. My value is not up for debate. When you walk into a high-stakes meeting, you carry this invisible shield with you. When a conversation turns subtly condescending, you do not get defensive. Defensiveness is just another tragic form of begging to be understood by those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You simply observe their erratic behavior, knowing with absolute certainty that it has nothing to do with your internal worth. A king does not argue with a peasant about his fundamental right to rule. He simply rules. This is exactly what separates a genuinely strong man from a boy masquerading in a man's body. The boy constantly fights and argues to prove he is valuable to the group. The man rests calmly in the unshakable knowledge that he already is, and always will be, immensely valuable. The second sentence. I control my response, not their respect. This is the exact point where most men absolutely break down. You naturally want to be respected. It is a primal, biological, masculine drive. But the fatal psychological flaw is believing you can somehow force or manipulate someone into respecting you. You cannot. Respect is an entirely external variable. If you tie your emotional stability to whether or not someone looks at you with admiration, you are voluntarily handing them absolute power over your mind. They hold all the strings, and you become nothing more than a reactive puppet. An elite strategist profoundly understands the dichotomy of control. You cannot dictate what they think. You cannot censor what they say. You can only master how you respond. When you aggressively shift your focus from chasing respect to mastering your own reactions, you become completely untouchable. If they mock you, you remain stone. If they praise you, you remain stone. You absolutely refuse to absorb their toxic poison, and you refuse to get drunk on their sweet honey. This is the pure, unadulterated essence of true emotional control. Let us completely break down the modern myth of earning respect. You have been sold a lie that if you just work hard enough, if you are just accommodating enough, or if you just achieve enough visible success, everyone will naturally respect you. This is a massive delusion, carefully designed to keep you running on an endless hamster wheel of people-pleasing. The harsh reality is that some people will intensely disrespect you simply because your quiet strength triggers their loud insecurities. Your focused calmness aggressively reminds them of their own internal chaos. If you try to argue and change their mind, you inevitably lower yourself to their chaotic frequency. A man of strong character does not try to bend reality to his fragile will. He firmly aligns himself with reality. And the reality is that human opinions are as notoriously fickle as the changing weather. Why would you ever choose to build your self-worth on a foundation of shifting sand? When you repeat the sentence, "I control my response, not their respect," you are violently severing the chain of emotional dependency. You are reclaiming your masculine energy. Let them think what they want. Their unrefined thoughts are their burden, not yours. Mastering your response is not about passive weakness. It is about weaponized patience. Think about the concept of the pause. When someone disrespects you, your biological instinct screams at you to immediately react, to strike back, to defend your bruised ego. But the elite Stoic man understands that the space between a stimulus and his response is where his ultimate power lies. When you face disrespect, take 3 deep seconds. In those 3 seconds, you reclaim your kingdom. You observe the insult not as an attack on your soul, but as raw data about the person delivering it. You realize that their disrespect is merely a projection of their own internal misery. By choosing not to react, you completely starve them of the reaction they desperately crave. You become an emotional black hole where their negativity simply disappears. This requires terrifying levels of self-discipline, but the reward is absolute psychological freedom. You slowly train your brain to realize that you are completely safe, regardless of external hostility. Your response is the only real territory you truly own. Guard it fiercely, and never hand over the keys to an emotional invader. The third sentence. I walk away from what diminishes me. Society heavily romanticizes the idea of grinding through toxic situations. You are told to endure, to stick it out, to fight for relationships and environments that are actively destroying your peace of mind. This is a monumental strategic error. Enduring unnecessary disrespect is not a badge of honor. It is a glaring symptom of low self-worth. The elite man possesses the ruthless capability to subtract. He understands that his time and his mental energy are his most fiercely valuable assets. If a friendship, a romantic relationship, or a professional environment consistently requires you to lower your standards or compromise your core values, it is diminishing you. You do not need to stage a dramatic exit. You do not need to write a long, emotional declaration of your departure. You simply turn your back and walk away. Walking away is the ultimate display of masculine power. It communicates that your internal peace is far more valuable than any external attachment. It is the raw, physical manifestation of self-respect. The reason so many men fail to walk away is due to the psychological sunk cost fallacy. You invest months, sometimes years, into a failing relationship or a dead-end career. Your ego desperately whispers that if you quit now, all that invested time was completely wasted. So, you double down on a losing hand. You accept diminishing returns on your emotional investment, hoping blindly that things will magically improve. This is the mindset of a chronic loser. The 1% man thinks like a cold, rational investor. He looks at the current reality without emotion. He asks himself, is this situation currently adding to my power, or is it silently draining my life force? If the answer is the latter, he completely cuts his losses immediately. He understands that the time spent was merely the tuition fee paid to learn a vital lesson. Staying in a toxic environment does not make you strong. It makes you deeply complicit in your own psychological destruction. When you adopt the sentence, "I walk away from what diminishes me," you install a powerful filter in your life. You aggressively protect your inner circle and your mental bandwidth from emotional parasites. The actual physical act of walking away changes your brain chemistry. When you voluntarily leave a toxic room, you are sending a massive, undeniable signal to your subconscious mind. I am incredibly valuable. You prove to yourself that you are not dependent on scraps of affection or terrible compromises. You create a powerful vacuum in your life, and while the average man is utterly terrified of emptiness, the Stoic man deeply embraces it. He knows that an empty space is far superior to a space filled with poison. This practice requires immense fortitude because you will inevitably face intense social pushback. People will call you arrogant. They will accuse you of being cold or unforgiving. Let them. Their discomfort with your boundary is a clear indicator that your boundary was desperately needed. You are not responsible for managing their disappointment. You are strictly responsible for managing your own standard of living. Embrace the quiet confidence of the man who can stand up, push in his chair, and leave any table where respect is no longer being served. That is true emotional control. The fourth sentence. Discomfort is the price of my freedom. Let us get brutally honest. The modern world is engineered for maximum, debilitating comfort. Everything is available at the push of a button. Instant food, instant entertainment, instant validation. This endless ocean of comfort is slowly suffocating your masculine drive. When you constantly choose the path of least resistance, you train your mind to deeply fear hardship. And a mind that fears hardship is a completely fragile mind. True self-worth cannot be forged on a soft couch. It is forged in the fires of voluntary discomfort. When you deliberately choose to do the difficult thing, whether that is a brutal physical workout, an uncomfortable but necessary conversation, or simply waking up before the sun, you are actively paying the high price for your psychological freedom. The elite man does not shy away from friction. He actively hunts it. He knows that every time he conquers his own desire for comfort, he deposits immense wealth into his internal bank of self-worth. You become unbreakable precisely because you have broken yourself down and rebuilt yourself stronger. Why does comfort destroy you? Because comfort breeds severe complacency, and complacency is the absolute enemy of competence. When you are deeply competent, you naturally respect yourself. When you are incompetent and lazy, you subconsciously loathe yourself. You cannot fake true self-esteem. Your brain knows exactly when you are lying, when you are cutting corners, and when you are taking the easy way out. If you lack self-worth, look at your daily habits. Are you aggressively challenging yourself, or are you just floating downstream like dead wood? The 1% man uses voluntary discomfort as a sharp tool to constantly remind himself of his own capacity for suffering. When you voluntarily subject yourself to controlled pain, the random suffering inflicted by the chaotic world suddenly loses its terrifying grip on you. You look at adversity not as a curse, but as a familiar sparring partner. Repeating the sentence, "Discomfort is the price of my freedom," shifts your entire paradigm. You stop complaining about how hard life is, and you start taking immense pride in how hard you are. Reframing pain as raw data is the ultimate Stoic hack. When you experience the intense friction of life, your primitive brain screams that something is terribly wrong. It demands that you retreat to safety. But your higher rational mind must violently override this instinct. You must look at the burning in your lungs during a run or the deep sting of rejection simply as objective information. It is just data telling you where your current limits are. And limits only exist so that they can be systematically destroyed. When you stop taking discomfort personally, you unlock a terrifying level of relentless endurance. You realize that avoiding pain means avoiding growth. The men who command absolute respect in any room are always the men who have clearly endured the most, yet remained entirely uncorrupted by the bitterness of their struggles. They have paid the brutal price for their freedom in the currency of sweat, discipline, and emotional fortitude. Embrace the heavy friction. Let it aggressively sand away your weaknesses until only the absolute core of your unbreakable character remains. The fifth sentence. I am the sole architect of my own standard. This principle separates the true leaders from the eternal followers. The vast majority of men live their entire lives trying to measure up to standards that were completely dictated to them by others. Society tells you exactly what success should look like, how you should dress, what you should drive, and what milestones you must forcefully hit by a certain age. When you chase these external metrics, you are playing a rigged game entirely designed by someone else. You are building a house on rented land. True self-worth explodes the moment you decide to burn down the societal scorecard and draft your own rigorous blueprints. You must establish an internal standard of excellence that is far more demanding than anything the outside world could ever expect of you. When you are the architect, you define what absolute integrity looks like. You define what extreme discipline looks like. And most importantly, you hold yourself brutally accountable to those metrics, regardless of whether anyone else is watching or clapping. The intense danger of relying on external metrics is that they are entirely hollow. You can achieve massive external success, earn the loud applause of millions, and still feel completely dead and worthless inside. This happens when your external achievements do not align with your internal code of honor. This is why you see wealthy, famous men absolutely self-destructing. They won the world's game, but they fundamentally lost their own. The elite man completely ignores the low standards of the modern masses. He realizes that the average standard today is tragically pathetic. It is defined by constant distraction, emotional fragility, and chronic laziness. To be normal today is to be profoundly weak. Therefore, you must rebel against the normal. You must become deeply obsessed with your own internal execution. Did you keep the promise you made to yourself this morning? Did you act with complete emotional control when provoked? These are the only vital questions that matter. When you are the absolute architect of your standard, your self-worth becomes entirely self-generated. It is a completely closed loop of immense power. Setting your own impossible standards requires a terrifying level of extreme self-honesty. You can no longer blame your boss, your ex-partner, or the economy for your profound lack of progress. When you draw the blueprint, you are entirely responsible for the construction. This heavy responsibility terrifies the weak, but it completely invigorates the strong. Imagine living a life where the highest authority you answer to is your own razor-sharp conscience. You work incredibly hard, not because you desire a promotion, but because delivering half-hearted effort deeply offends your personal standard. You treat people with profound respect, not because you want them to like you, but because disrespecting others violates your internal code of absolute strength. This is the defining characteristic of the Stoic elite. You become a self-contained ecosystem of relentless excellence. Repeating the sentence, "I am the sole architect of my own standard," reminds you daily that no one is coming to save you, and no one is coming to grade you. You are the master of your own brutal ascent. The sixth sentence. External noise does not penetrate my inner fortress. We live in an era of unprecedented, deafening noise. Every single day you are aggressively bombarded with opinions, outrage, breaking news, and the endless chaotic drama of other people's deeply flawed lives. This constant barrage is carefully designed to fragment your absolute attention and destabilize your emotional core. If you allow this noise to freely enter your mind, you will constantly feel anxious, angry, and deeply unworthy. The Stoic man builds an impenetrable mental fortress. He treats his attention as his absolute most sacred resource. He violently guards the gates of his mind. He deeply understands that most of what people say is entirely meaningless. It is just the terrified chatter of lost souls desperately trying to validate their own chaotic existence. You must develop the supreme ability to brutally filter this noise. Let them shout. Let them panic. Let them passionately debate things that do not matter. Inside your fortress, there is only pure, unshakable silence and relentless focus. Filtering the noise of the masses is not about total ignorance. It is about fierce, tactical prioritization. You must aggressively audit what you allow into your brain. Stop scrolling through the endless digital garbage that slowly rots your masculine drive. Stop engaging in petty arguments with small-minded individuals who absolutely drag you down to their pathetic level. When someone directs their toxic noise at you, an insult, a subtle jab, a projection of their intense insecurity, you must visualize it, literally bouncing off the thick stone walls of your inner fortress. It cannot touch you unless you actively lower the drawbridge and invite it in. The 1% man possesses a deeply weaponized silence. When confronted with loud, chaotic energy, he responds with nothing. This absolute lack of reaction completely disarms the aggressor. They expect you to match their desperate frequency. When you remain totally unbothered, firmly rooted in your fortress, you project an aura of terrifying psychological dominance. You prove that their noise is utterly powerless against your profound stillness. This weaponized silence is the ultimate modern superpower. While everyone else is screaming desperately to be heard, the man who sits in profound quietness suddenly commands absolute attention. His silence is heavy. It is deeply intimidating. It is the unmistakable hallmark of a man who possesses unbreakable self-worth. He does not need to fiercely defend his ego because his ego is completely secured within the fortress. Practicing this requires you to master your own internal impulses. When the noise gets loud, your instinct is to add your voice to the chaotic shouting match. You must aggressively suppress this urge. Breathe deeply. Remind yourself that engaging with fools makes you indistinguishable from them. Repeat the sentence. External noise does not penetrate my inner fortress. Feel the immense strength in those words. You become an immovable mountain while the storms of public opinion and petty drama rage helplessly around you. You remain completely untouched, profoundly focused on your own absolute mission. The seventh sentence. I decide who I am today. This is the absolute culmination of true Stoic power. The greatest tragic lie you have ever been told is that your past completely dictates your future. Society wants to rigidly box you in based on your previous failures, your old mistakes, and your past weaknesses. Your own deeply flawed ego wants to keep you chained to a comfortable, familiar identity, even if that identity is inherently weak. But the truth is, identity is not a heavy, permanent tattoo. It is a completely fluid choice you make every single morning. When you wake up, you are handed a blank slate. You do not have to be the man who lacked confidence yesterday. You do not have to be the man who desperately sought validation last week. In this exact moment, you have the absolute authority to decide your character. True self-worth demands that you ruthlessly sever the chains of your past. You are not your past mistakes. You are entirely defined by the deliberate actions you choose to take right now, today. This daily declaration is the compound interest of deep self-respect. You do not build an elite mindset overnight. You absolutely forge it day by day, decision by decision. When you wake up and firmly declare, I decide who I am today, you take ultimate and total responsibility for your existence. You strip away all pathetic excuses. If you lack discipline, it is exclusively because you choose to lack discipline today. If you are deeply powerful, it is exclusively because you aggressively choose to be powerful today. This level of extreme ownership is incredibly heavy, which is precisely why 99% of men violently reject it. They much prefer the comforting warmth of being a helpless victim. But for the elite man, this intense responsibility is the absolute source of his unmatched freedom. He knows that his self-worth is infinitely renewable. It cannot be permanently stolen because he completely reconstructs it every single morning. Burn these 7 sentences deep into your subconscious mind. Stop begging the world for permission to be valuable. Decide your worth today and force the world to deal with the unbreakable man you have chosen to become. You now possess the 7 absolute anchors of unbreakable self-worth. Understand this one fundamental truth. Self-worth is not a shiny trophy you miraculously stumble upon. It is a daily, deliberate, and sometimes brutal psychological choice. You are no longer a passive participant in their chaotic games. You are the absolute owner of your internal reality. I want to thank you for staying until the very end. Your attention proves that you are part of the elite few who are genuinely committed to mastering their minds rather than merely complaining about the modern world. If you found deep value in this, fiercely hit the subscribe button and join the ranks of men building total mental superiority. Now, I have one final demand for you. Go to the comments and tell me directly which of the 7 sentences hit you the hardest, and exactly how are you going to implement it today. Decide who you are. The debate is completely over.